Welcome, gentlemen and gentlewomen, and all of you carrying along gentle children. And today it's debate day, because today we have a question: which is better, season 1 of Mythic Plus or season 2 of Mythic Plus? If you want to split the question, which is better, the healing requirements and the job of healers in season 1, or their job and their role in season 2? The other question is, what did we prefer? Did we prefer stable dungeons, simply changing a seasonal affix every season of the previous expansions? Or do we now prefer, now that we have seen all of the Dragonflight dungeons, do we prefer this new system? The system of splitting the dungeons and keeping half of them for a later season to keep the season more fresh, as well as the added change of removing the seasonal affix because of this. Since the affix was there to keep the seasons fresh, there is no need to keep the season fresh if every season you change all of the dungeons, right? So this is the question for today. What has changed in Mythic Plus in the past, I would say, couple of seasons, from the end of Shadowlands to the first season of Dragonflight to now this season of Dragonflight? We have the first point about healing. This is something that has been heard of and talked about quite often, how we have changed the healing requirements for healers over time. And this was a debate because initially many players did not enjoy this style of healers in Mythic Plus. The style was, the healer doesn't heal. The healer just does damage, and then occasionally there might be a boss or a trash mob or two doing some AoE damage that you have to heal, and then you go back doing damage. This was reined in from Shadowlands to Dragonflight. In season 1 of Dragonflight you had fewer chances, smaller windows to do tons of damage, and then in season 2 it got even tighter. In season 2 you are even more busy healing compared to before. That's the first debate, whether or not players do enjoy the style of healing that we have now in Dragonflight compared to the older style of healing in Mythic Plus. Some players do like it because healers are supposed to heal. Some players like it because previously healers could mask, could hide being incompetent, because healing in Shadowlands wasn't that important, wasn't that much of a sign of skill. It was more about how much damage you could do, whereas now healers are being exposed. Now the weak healers are being exposed. Now we are getting into the second boss of Nokud Offensive in season 1, and you can spot all of the clown healers that can't pull their HPS on that boss, for example. So some players do enjoy the change for this new season. Others, of course, don't. Others feel like it's a little bit too unfair. Others feels like it puts even more pressure onto healers when you already have the vast majority, most of the mechanics existing just basically to punish healers. Even if a DPS is failing the mechanic, what is going to happen by failing the mechanic is giving you 6 stacks of bursting instead of 3. So the pressure is on the healer. If the DPS is failing by failing thundering and getting stunned and risking death, the pressure is on the healer to save him. So that's the other point of the argument when it comes to healers in this new season of Mythic Plus. The other point of the argument is, what do we feel about, what do players feel about going from the expansion is released, I am doing a normal Necrotic Wake dungeon, and then I'm doing Heroic Necrotic Wake, and then I'm doing Mythic 0 Necrotic Wake, and then I'm doing Mythic Plus from the first day of the first week of the first month to the last day of the last month of the second year of the expansion, compared to what we have now. What we have now is, we do the same process, we start in the same way, but we cycle every season, so that we have a more fresh and refreshing and recycling set of dungeons which can feel more different over time compared to our previous expansions. This ties together with the removal of the seasonal affix by Blizzard. Obviously, as pointed out, because the novelty of the season is no longer the seasonal affix, the novelty of the season is the new dungeons. So that's why you don't need a new affix to spice things up in the same dungeon you have been running over and over. That's the other part of the debate on how things have been going in Mythic Plus. Now, for the healers, as a healer myself, I could chime in on the debate. I am partially favorable towards this new style, this new meta of Season 2 and even Season 1, and like Dragonflight as a whole, compared to previous expansions, of basically the equivalent of the stereotype of sending women back to the kitchen. The healers have to go back healing, that's their job. Don't try to do things that men or DPS players are born to do. You, as a healer, should be focusing more on healing. That's something I can agree with overall. Still, if I had to complain about the season, I would still be annoyed as a healer by the amount of affixes that do not effectively punish other roles. Like, for example, failing bursting. Why, instead of failing bursting, instead of taking more and more damage, we give the DPS players less and less damage done? Why, if you fail something like storming or volcanic, if you get knocked up, why don't you get a damage reduction debuff, a haste reduction debuff on a DPS player? Why, if you fail quaking, if you clip yourself with quaking, why does the healer have to pick up your slack and heal you? If you fail quaking, you should just take a 30% haste debuff for 10 seconds, because next time you have to move out, you clown, right? That is one of my pet peeves as far as affixes going with the plus. I would like to see more affixes actually punishing the specs other than the healer, because otherwise, if every affix failure causes you to lose health, then the pressure will always be on the healer to fix that mistake. That's the side of the debate I agree with, the pro-healer side of the debate when it comes to these new seasons of Mythic Plus. Then you have the other part of the debate, the other part of the questions and the discussion about what has changed from our, Legion BFA Shadowlands type of dungeons in Mythic Plus, which is we release the full list of dungeons at the beginning of the expansion, and you're going to be doing Mythic Plus in those dungeons for 2 years in a row. The only thing that you will change over time is going to be one affix every season that we will be changing, and then 2 dungeons that we took from the Mega Dungeon and split into 2 Mythic Plus dungeons, compared to what we have now, which is 4 dungeons from Dragonflight, 4 old dungeons in Season 1, and then the other 4 dungeons of Dragonflight and 4 more old dungeons in Season 2. Also, what we should have in Season 3, I believe, is a combination of the 4 favorite Dragonflight dungeons and then 4 more old dungeons. So we have this constant cycle of new things, new dungeons to try out on every season of Mythic Plus without having to feel a little bit bored and repetitive in doing the same thing over and over, because even if you change the affix every season, it still kind of gets stale. So in this regard, I am favorable towards the changes we've gotten from Dragonflight. I think one of the complaints at the start of the expansion, I didn't think it had much merit, the complaint of, wow, I am paying full price for a game and Blizzard is gating, Blizzard is splitting 50% of the dungeons for like 6 months in the future. I don't think that was very relevant. I still think that recycling old expansion dungeons to make them fit for Mythic Plus is a good overall idea. Yes, some of these have been quite disappointing. In the first season we have gotten Shadowmoon Burial Grounds and Court of Stars, which I don't think were implemented very well. This season I think they did a better job in picking and balancing the older dungeons that we have gotten so far. So I think overall it's a better choice than staying with the same 8, basically the same 8 dungeons for 2 years and just repeat them with different affixes. So I think overall, even if we lost a possibly cool and interactive affix of the season, maybe buffing us, giving us some cool to play around steroids that we have seen in the past, I think that getting different dungeons every few months is still making up for the lack of that seasonal affix, so I think it's an improvement. So as far as the debate goes, I think overall we have gotten mostly improvements in Dragonflight when it comes to Mythic Plus. And if we have to look at from Season 1 to Season 2, we have also gotten improvements, because I think getting rid of the seasonal affix in exchange for fresh dungeons is better. I think healers being more focused about healing rather than doing more damage is also better. I still have a gripe with too many affixes punishing healers and not punishing the rest of the group, but still that can be improved. So overall, I think as far as this debate goes, I think we are in a pretty good situation right now when it comes to Mythic Plus. Of course, you are free to come up with your own points. Maybe you are of the completely different opinion. Maybe you think that it was much better to have different affixes every season, and you did not care about having the same dungeons for the whole expansion. Maybe you are one of the healers who is okay doing damage and putting most of your power in doing as much damage as possible and not nearly as much about healing. But, everyone can have their opinions, and, opinions that can be wrong, and in this case, if you don't have my opinion on this matter, you are wrong. So this is what we have for today, the discussion, the debate on how have we been going so far in this Season 2 and Season 1 of Dragonflight when it comes to the changes put into Mythic Plus. So with this question out of the way, I'm going to let you discuss it in the comments if you want, if you have a different opinion, if you have a different thought on what's been going on in Mythic Plus in the past couple of seasons so far in Dragonflight. So with this out of the way, I'm going to leave you to the rest of your day. We are thanking as usual all of the Patreon supporters together with everyone who is supporting for free as well, liking and commenting down below on this video as well as subscribing to the channel itself are still helpful way to support. With this out of the way, thanks of course as usual for watching the video, guys. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, no, but for real though, for real, why if you fail and get smacked by Spiteful you take damage? Just take 90% less damage done for 5 seconds and see how much those fuckers start dodging those ghosts.